Hello, and welcome to week 2 of Connect 2021, Building Community and Adapting for Tomorrow, Government Executive Media Group's first ever virtual market preview. I'm Hillary Serpis, Vice President and Publisher at Route 50, and this week is all about the importance of building community. While the newness of COVID-19 has worn off, all of us at Government Executive Media Group are constantly looking for more effective ways to deliver great digital event experiences and programming. We often find that collaborating across our internal teams here and with our GovCon colleagues is the best way to strike up inspiration and innovation. To start today's session, let's hear from a number of our friends and partners on what they see as the future of government marketing.
Our vendors have just jumped through hoops, giving us much more innovative ways of reaching our customers, going from events to virtual and having all of our plans integrated, moving to an agency-based, focused way of marketing and selling, and away from, products and more towards solution and talking to our customers' needs. I think we're just making great strides in that, and our vendor community is really stepping up and helping. But I think most of all, it's really exciting to see what's going on with the technology that's out there. We actually are helping to modernize our government, right? Cloud modernization, citizen services, DevSecOps, AI, machine learning. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is just a very exciting time, not only in government marketing, but just in technology in and of itself. We're allowing the government to keep a lot of that legacy data, right where it is, and just, layer your platforms, layer your technology, and, build those interfaces that allow them to innovate themselves. So I'm quite frankly looking forward to 2021. And I'm sure you are too.
So what do you see as the future of government marketing?
Definitely a lot more digital, right? And I'm starting to see more companies and conferences figure out this online platform for networking. I think we're still trying to figure out how to pivot from that face-to-face conversation to that face-to-face online one-on-one. But I think I'm interested to see how the technology evolves in that area.
I think one of the things that is maybe not a trend that I've noticed is that I feel as though government executives are more willing to talk about things now than they were pre-COVID. If you go into a conference room and you sit down with 5 people, I feel like sometimes that was not the right setting, and I feel like not that they're sharing information they shouldn't, but this has been it's given it an opportunity for them to speak a little more freely about kind of what their goals are.
In terms of the future of government marketing, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see any of our large trade shows in the near future. For example, Rocky Mountain Cyberspace just opened exhibit sales for their live event in March, but they're going to have 2,000 attendees, and the current guidance in Colorado is only for 175 people for an in-person event.
For the future of government marketing, I think it just really is about authenticity, connecting, building trust, having a long-standing relationship with your customer, giving them things that they value and enjoy and learn from, help them do their jobs effectively. The job of a civil servant, I think, just keeps getting harder to stay up with technology. So helping our civil servants do their mission by being able to keep them informed in ways that are useful to them and not just market to them or sell to them.
It's an opportunity for us to go deeper into digital. The future of government marketing, in my opinion, is going to be about investing in digital. It's an amazing way to reach this audience. Leveraging contextual ads, advertising, retargeting, geo-targeting. It's a methodology that maybe we haven't explored as much as we could or should be looking at it.
The future of government marketing has to include 3 factors. Your ability to differentiate your company and your solutions in ways that anticipate and address your customers' requirements, making certain your subject matter experts contribute to the collective intelligence of our market, and leveraging LinkedIn better than your competitors. Adapt to the current environment, but focus on these.
Hi, I'm Jim O'Hare, perhaps better known as Jerry Gergich, or Gary, or Larry, or Terry, or Barry from Parks and Recreation. And you must be wondering what I think about the future of government marketing. Well, it's no secret that the world has had to pivot to digital. The key is to make sure you stand out. How? Well, Hillary Serpis, I am leaving the explaining to you and the experts.
Thanks so much, Jim, and a big thank you to all of my friends and colleagues who shared their thoughts and insights with us today. As many of you are aware, Government Executive Media Group has been no stranger to making the pivot to digital during this time. This included moving major editorial events to a digital venue, like our first ever Route 50 Future City Summit. Despite our initial disappointment of not being able to host our inaugural Future City Summit here in person, the event was a hit. It was a great illustration of how high-end content can convene a community. Across 1 week, we had over 1,000 registrants, 6 mayors speak, and multiple other state and local leaders share their ideas and engage with our content. It was an example of how a pure digital environment empowers you to maintain connection with those communities over a prolonged period of time. Today, you'll hear from my friend and colleague, Connie Sayers, President of Government Executive Media Group, as well as our GM and leader of events, Anna Pettigen, our new Director of Events, George Jackson, and our friend Sal Fuentes, CEO of Decision Council. Decision Council is our proprietary partner in the newly launched GovExec Virtuoso platform. This incredible panel, with decades of experience in event programming, will explore what makes an effective virtual event and how to sustain engagement over time. Take it away, Connie.
Thank you for joining me for our session, The Art and Science of Community Building, How to Build and Sustain Relationships with Key Customers. I'm Constance Sayers, President of Government Executive Media Group, and I am thrilled to be moderating this discussion. Building and activating communities of key stakeholders has always been at the core of government marketing, and events have been the cornerstone of those community building strategies. But all of that changed in March. So today we're going to explore what community building looks like in 2021 and beyond. How have we adapted? How can virtual events fuel this strategy? How this might evolve at a live event programming returns in the next 9 to 12 months, and also what lessons have we learned in launching GovExec Virtuoso, our proprietary platform that was custom built to meet the needs of a modern approach to convening and connecting digitally. So joining me today for this discussion, 3 true experts in this space. I have Anna Pettigen, VP and General Manager of Government Executive Events, George Jackson, the Director of Government Executive Events, and himself a longtime vet of producing content in our market. We're so lucky to have him joining us. This, I think, is one of your first panels, George. And finally, Sal Fuentes, who is the founder and CEO of Decision Council. So, Sal, I don't know if you know, your tagline says on your website, "Let's do this," which is a little open-ended. I don't know if you know that. But I love that because you really do it all, revenue activation, content strategy, digital architecture. And I just think now more than ever, we kind of need everything to blend. So I should mention that Decision Council is our proprietary partner in building GovExec Virtuoso. So welcome, panel. I'm so thrilled to have y'all today. So let's just start off by talking about where we are and what we've learned so far with the shift from virtual events in 2020. So Sal, help us frame everything.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that at the beginning of the crisis, I think everybody was scrambling just to find a way to move their events or connect with customers in new and inventive ways. But over this past 6 months, the stakes have just gone up. If you look at what's happened in the digital event space, it started with, hey, let's take our webinar model and try to replicate it. Now you're competing with a set of users whose consumer life and business life have been integrated by state experience. And now the stakes of, you're competing with, hey, this is how Netflix works. Hey, this is how Roku works. Now you're trying to create this experience for them online that has to compete with what they're seeing in their consumer space. So the stakes from a content standpoint, from a use of data standpoint, and what you mentioned earlier, integrating the whole story into my sales and marketing supply chain, it's all part of one cohesive experience. And I think that's the biggest thing that's changed over the past 6 months.
Absolutely. I definitely think even for us, I mean, I want Anna Pettigrew to talk a little bit about, our journey, because I do think we were able to pivot fairly easy because we had an existing digital platform. I think if you were if it was all live, it was a little bit of a struggle. So Anna, I'd love for you to take us back to March. You just returned from your honeymoon and it began to look a little worse every day when you returned. So take us back.
Yeah, no, and that brings up a great point. I think going into this year, 2020, we were looking to enhance and kind of expand our digital event frontier. And we were executing, webcasts and viewcasts, which were the studio-based panel discussions that we were streaming for a digital audience. So, and we're live streaming pretty much all of our live events. So we had kind of that background in that basic infrastructure that we needed. But like Connie said, just on the plane back from Mexico for my honeymoon, I get the text that our office will be closed. And I was like, oh, great. We have probably 20 events in March for the remainder of March, live events. So what the heck are we going to do? So luckily, I got back and my team was already on the ground working to convert a lot of those live events into our basic digital event experiences. And I think in the past, what has it been, 7 months now, a lot of it has really revolved around experimentation. We had that basic webcast model, where everyone can tune in remotely and participate remotely. But from there, we wanted to continue to innovate and find new ways to engage with our audience and not just have a slide-based webcast. So really a lot of the past 7 months has been around experimentation, finding new ways that we can both engage with our speakers and have great new types of content, as well as engage with the audience and encourage them to continue participating. It was definitely a big pivot. I wouldn't say it was easy. It was definitely the first 2 months, I think, were probably the most insane months. I've been doing events for 8 years and it was insane. But I would say that I learned probably more in that 2 months than I've ever learned. So it's been a journey and we're continuing each day to find new ways to be efficient and execute and find new productive ways to increase our content and enhance our content even. So it's been a fun month.
And I will say that, I'm not sure everybody was always ready to do that, and I think a lot of, some of our clients were very comfortable moving immediately. Some of our clients, that they were mourning a little bit their live events that they'd put a lot into. They had a lot of investment in them with SMEs and it was, kind of a slide into the summer. And and at one point we weren't quite sure if we were going to be doing hybrid or what was going to happen there. And at one point we were, exploring the idea of, socially distanced events with hand sanitizer everywhere. And it just was a really kind of, interesting year. George, you just kind of moved from a traditional streaming broadcast model to our model. And I'd love to talk a little bit with you about what do you think has changed? You mentioned when we were talking earlier about the wealth of metrics that are now available. So I'd love to hear your perspective of what you think has changed this year.
Yeah, in March, I had a similar, oh boy, kind of moment when the pandemic really started to set in. I think initially it was about shoring up our team and focusing on a phrase that we're all very familiar with, I think, covering the federal government, which is risk mitigation. You were at a point where you couldn't bring people together physically in the same place to record video anymore. So we had to rely on WebEx and Skype and Zoom and these other video service-based platforms that were quite useful. We, when I was at Gov Matters, didn't have all the resources that Government Executive Media Group has. We didn't have a list We didn't have all of the platforms that are at your disposal. And so initially we focused a lot on partnerships. One of the big joys of coming over to GovExec is that everything is there. It's all housed in the same place. You have the wonderful reporting staff that serves as the backbone for a lot of these engagements. You have the list and the digital tools to bring the right audience to the table. And then you have this wonderful virtuoso-based platform that kind of starts to bring everything together. And I really think that in media, this is the way that things are going. I mean, Sal mentioned Netflix earlier. Video-based content can be captured by anyone. Now it can be broadcast on websites in real time. And I think what we're doing at GovExec is really the future of engagement right now. Just one more point to jumping on what Anna said about this year of experimentation, not to minimize the effects of this pandemic, but professionally, this has been one of the most exciting years of my entire career. I mean, you just couldn't really do anything wrong. Your game plan, like Anna said, just sort of got thrown in the trash in March, and you had to do something. So we got to do a lot of really exciting things. And I think that that year in 2020 and the groundwork that Anna's team did will really lay the foundation for a lot of growth and a lot of really exciting new modes of communication for GovExec in 2021.
Well, let's definitely just, even if you look at metrics, digital metrics are, a lot of metrics are one thing, digital metrics are another. And so you get, you have just a wealth of information around this content, which I think that people are going to learn to expect a little bit more. And I love, the panel's thoughts on this. But also what changed too is, you weren't, beholden to a date in time, right? We weren't, it didn't have to be next Thursday. So what really opened up for everyone, which is that you could get, Anna, for our defense tech summit and for State of Defense, you were able to get speakers that probably, and I think, George, you mentioned this also when we talked earlier, you were able to get speakers you never were able to get before, and you're able to get metrics that you were never able to get before. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the great things that have, certainly there was a little bit of shell shock in moving into this, but, we've had audiences that engagement has been higher than we probably would have seen even in some of our live events. So I'd love the panel to talk about that.
Yeah, I can.
Let me jump on that. Oh, go ahead, Anna. Sorry.
We're ambitious here. I think, Connie mentioned that morning period, and I think we all kind of had that once the live event option was off the table. We were risk mitigating and de-risking the rest of the year. But I think once we were past that phase, it was really looking at that digital environment as an opportunity and not something holding us back from expanding. And per Connie, her notes there, we've booked more high-level defense and government speakers than we ever have before, because like she said, we're not beholden to a date because a venue, that's the only available time the venue can host us. We're not, we're able to have speakers participate more remotely, and their schedules can line up, and we can pre-record. Pre-recording has been a blessing for us a lot as well. And I think also you're getting audience members that are tuning into the live session, but they're still tuning in later and sharing the digital archive with their colleagues and their friends who may have not attended. And you're getting that more information and insight around how are they engaging? How long are they viewing the event? You can go to a live event and you can sit there. That doesn't mean you're engaged the entire time you're sitting in the room. You could be texting or emailing or doing other work things. But you're really seeing like, okay, someone was logged in for 45 minutes. That's a great stat. So I think to Connie's point, there's so many more insights and learnings in this digital environment because you do have those analytics.
I think it was needed too. The knowledge shared that you mentioned and the quality of the speakers, COVID prompted such a large pivot in the community that we serve that initially this massive shift over to telework meant that these employees who are now working from home were hungry and needed information about how to execute on these vital functions for the government. And so some of the programs that we were producing, shared that information that they needed, and it shared that information in a very safe way. I think that people sort of underestimate that. And if I look at 2020, despite all those challenges, this is one of the best years for information sharing ever. These top leaders in government agencies don't have to schedule a car to come to a location, to give a speech, and then to go back to, where they work. Those engagements that maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours pre-COVID are down to, in some cases, 15 or 20 minutes. So it just makes it a lot easier for those folks to participate, and the content has benefited as a result. To your question about digital metrics, Connie, I just, no matter when we go back to this in-person future and what that takes, I think that the digital metrics that we're providing today as sort of media organizations, people won't not want to take advantage of that in the future. So I see in-person events having a very strong complement of, these digital innovations that we're talking about today.
Next question, I'm going to, Sal, I want you to help me out here a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the virtual events model. Everybody, we kind of started off at the beginning, tons of engagement, lots of high numbers. But I think what has happened is you've started to have a little bit of, the stakes are getting higher. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a good virtual event. So in terms of programming and formats and production and marketing, Sal, let's talk a little bit about, the streaming entertainment experience and what do people need to do to produce good virtual events now?
I think what you've seen over the past 6 months is a complete separation between the pretenders and the contenders, right? The pretenders are trying just to replicate that physical experience, the intimacy and adjacency they used to have. And now the contenders have raised their game completely. They realize that they're programming content for an entire year, that they've got to find a way to create a compelling reason for someone to take their Outlook calendar or their Google calendar and carve out 2 hours, 3 hours a day over a long period of time to actually engage. And so that's changed production budgets. It's changed networking technology. And going back to your original question about metrics, what the metrics are showing is that if you don't create a compelling experience, if you don't have great content, they're going to not spend time. That 1 hour they booked on their calendar, they're going to spend 10 minutes and go away. And the analytics are showing us exactly what works and what we need to continue to program and what kind of content they're looking for. So it's more of a challenge from the standpoint of we've got to be better at this, but you're getting immediate feedback and immediate results that when we look at how we partner with our clients and how we partner with our sponsors, we're able to create better strategies. And fundamentally, that's going to change the revenue supply chain across the board.
So definitely the idea, it's on demand, it's metrics driven, it's led by content, and it just seems like as though, experimentation is the key. I mean, and not to be afraid to experiment. And I mean, and we've certainly had some things that just haven't worked well, or some platforms that haven't worked well. You just can't let that kind of get you. You got to just keep experimenting, because I think the audience is, this thing's going on for a little while longer. And I think we're going to, as people, the fatigue is probably going to continue, but for a while. And so you just absolutely have to up your game. What about things like, serialized content, gamification? I mean, is that going to be kind of the next wave, Sal, do you think? Like, really looking at, like the next formats?
I promised myself I wasn't going to use any cliche terms, but I'm going to go with one, which is the idea of snackable content, right? We hear about it all the time. But, if you look at especially the under 30 executives and managers, and you look at how they use YouTube, you look at how they use Audible and these different formats, their podcasting preferences, what you're seeing is, hey, can you inform me in 20 minutes? On my jog, can I learn a little bit more about cybersecurity and defense? Right? Those kinds of topics, and being able to educate myself quickly and immediately, it's just going to continue to grow. I think one of the smartest things that GovExec did, and I know Anna and her team, was the idea that we leave the entire set of events on demand, right? And you can go back and re-educate yourself. Think about the choices you had to make at a physical event. I'm going to go to 3 to 4 breakout sessions or 3 to 4 panels. I don't have to make any concessions anymore. I can consume all of it and I can consume it on my schedule, on my time, when appropriate to my business function. That kind of convenience is the kind of thing that people are looking for. And I think they're going to look for it in audio. I think they're going to look for it in video. And God forbid you had low production quality and a schlocky panel, because they're going to know it and you're going to kill your brand in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, you've said all along, the technical acumen is going to rule. It's the AV people running the show now. And so, I mean, and you've got to up your technology game and your staff's technology game. We'll get to that in a second. But Anna, I'd love to talk with you a little bit about, how to prevent digital fatigue. Let's talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of migrating format. If you just take a 3-day event, live event that worked well, should you just pick it up and do it the same way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it also piggybacks off of kind of Sal's comments there. And Sal said this in our earlier call this week, but not everything should be a digital event or a virtual conference. I think looking at different ways to share that content, share those speakers, not just setting up that day-long virtual conference on a virtual platform. That's not going to hit a ton of marks all the time. You're going to see decent engagement, but you're going to see drop off as well. So, a lot of things that we've experimented with is spreading our content across multiple days. Our State of Defense program that we actually hosted through September and October, we had 5 different events targeting the different service branches within the Defense Department. And each week we highlighted one of those service branches and had that snackable content that Sal mentioned, really quick hit programming that, we had a leader and then we had a policy discussion directly after, and continuing to utilize those videos post-event to create even shorter sizzle reels that our editorial team then would post on article pages and continue to promote through the e-newsletters and other digital advertising across our proprietary site. So finding new ways to take that content from the live experience and then make it more digestible, make it more accessible and easy to watch. I think also Sal mentioned the podcast and the audio specific, taking content from your live digital event and producing it in different formats post-event, so that people can tune in while they're in the car. They can listen to the Defense One radio interview session with the Marine Corps General. So just finding new avenues to share that content, I think, is really critical. Another piece of content that we're also producing quite often with our events is the top 5 takeaways. So really highlighting some of the biggest conversations and the biggest talking points from a live event and continuing to promote in a more digestible manner. And again, linking back to the archived video. So I think a lot of those moments continue to engage with an audience, and it also continues to build new folks within your audience, which we've seen work really well across a lot of our events this year. So excited to continue trying new formats, different ways that we're engaging both with our speakers and our audience.
But I think that's key. If you can get them coming back, that's the beginning of the building of a community.
Yes.
But one thing, George, you said something really interesting, which was that you couldn't do anything wrong this year. It was great. It was a very forgiving year, but user experience is a different thing. I know you talked a little bit about, when we were talking earlier about the fact that, you have to, users have to, if they're not going to show up if they've got to go through a bajillion screens and do a bunch of things to log onto the content. So I don't know, if you have some thoughts on that.
The technology itself has to be easy to use. No one wants the added frustration, because they have plenty of frustrations right now of not being able to figure out how to get the content in the first place. So I think the experimentation that we've talked about multiple times and sort of Anna's positioning for events in 2021 will really focus on ease of use. And that's really important. I think the next phase of experimentation is something that we've all talked about before. How can you replicate that networking aspect that the hotel bar or the happy hour sort of, gave to this community. I don't think anyone has really perfected that yet. I think, we have a few things up our sleeve and don't want to give away the secret sauce here for 2021, but that's the next phase of really getting this community that we're talking about super engaged.
So we've touched a little bit on what it takes to have a good digital event, which I think is kind of the building block of a digital community right now. So let's move though and talk a little bit about community building and how that fits into all of this. So you've always had the greatest, thing was about, killing the networking reception. Let's face it, we all hated the networking reception, with the exception of Hillary Surface. I think, to get the badge, to get the coffee station was a little pain. We all did it. It was all the things that we, knew needed to happen. But like George just mentioned, what you're really trying to recreate is the great conversations at the lobby bar, not the ones in necessarily in the hall. I'd love to, I totally stole that from you.
There's one thing that we hated more than the networking. It was the donut wall. Remember these walls of donuts where people would put the donuts? I'm like, like you want to give me diabetes? What is this? Like, who are these people? Like, I'm sorry, it was painful. I'd rather go to get a root canal than go have a donut wheel. But back to the lobby bar. By the way, I appreciate, George, that you and I share that affinity for that. I do miss the lobby bar. But what people have to look at is why did we enjoy that? Because it was natural. It was organic, right? That you were in a comfortable setting and you felt good about engaging because you knew that there was a set of commonality there. Hey, we probably came from the same place. I could probably strike up a conversation. And what we haven't figured out, but I think we've got some good ideas, is how do we create that natural affinity where the community owns the engagement? How do we empower these communities, of whether they're defense professionals or federal executives or even mayors? Like, how do we facilitate the mayors to actually have conversations among themselves? And we're really the conduit to the dialogue, right? And what we do is we contribute expertise and we contribute opinion that allows them to catalyze a conversation. And I think as you look at, and what's great is, we're all strategizing 2021 is looking at creating platforms and investing in platforms where they own the dialogue and they own the conversation. And we are really going along for a ride with them. And then what's going to happen? We're going to produce better content. We're going to talk about the right issues. We're going to look at the trends that they really care about. Think about it. Every mayor, every governor is, how do I make sure every citizen has connectivity? Well, great. Then how do we start to look at the content and the speakers and the people we need to bring to that community so they can have an honest conversation about 100% connectivity, about the digitally empowered education system, about the completely remote managed government, complete resiliency. Those are the kinds of concepts we get to talk about in 2021. And it's all going to be because we facilitated a community and let them take control of it and just sort of created the boundaries of engagement. And that's where I think it's going to be exciting, at least until we can go back to a lobby bar.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that the editorial backbone, too, that the GovExec franchise brings to the table makes that easier for those communities, those mayors, those top defense officials, those federal executives. The name and reputation of Government Executive, of Defense One, of Route 50, of NextGov really makes that a lot easier for those people to all come together. And these platforms that we've talked about, if that makes that easy, even better.
George, I'd like to jump on that. There's a reason all the top producers in Hollywood are going to Netflix, right? There's a reason that the streaming producers now have access to the best talent. If your platform doesn't have gravitas, you don't get the big names. And I think that's such a key point, George, is that people now realize that certain brands have certain access to the right audiences. And that's why you're seeing the top creative professionals, the top intellectual thinkers in almost every category in B2B across the board, or in B2G in your case, right? They're starting to move to the platforms of gravitas because they just can't get traction anywhere else.
I'd like to actually shift this question to Anna for a second. Anna, what are we seeing in terms of, actually, how do we do this? So with like Virtuoso and some of the other things, are you finding roundtables? Are you finding, what are things that are bringing people back again and again in terms of like formats that folks can actually use?
Yeah, I think, George and Sal both mentioned content. Content is continuing to be the driver of our audience engagement, whether that's pre-event engagement, having our audience members help shape what our agendas are going to be, or during the event engagement, whether that's through an audience chat feature or a Q&A feature. If it's good content, you're going to get people asking questions and looking for insights and looking to connect with the speakers or with their peers about what they're doing to fix something or overcome a hurdle or the cool project that came up. So really good content makes a good experience for your audience. We also are doing a lot of roundtable programming, which is a really discussion-based experience. So they're more intimate, but they offer the opportunity for the audience and even our clients, as well as folks from our internal teams, to really engage with each other about a specific hurdle or a specific topic that's so timely and critical for these leaders to discuss. So it takes a lot of cultivating the right attendees to participate, getting their buy-in, and also looking to them to help shape what that discussion really is. We found those roundtables to be really exciting and actually really informative, both for our marketing teams, our internal editorial teams, as well as our clients as they look to pivot and think about their marketing strategy going into the new year.
Yeah. And I think research plays a really good role, because that can also help you frame some content. This whole idea, having folks work on projects and they can come back and really kind of contribute to the discussion, no matter what it is. And another thing too, we've been talking a lot about events specifically, but there are other things like podcasts. I always am such a proponent of audio, and that's really taking off. And, so I know we've been talking about things like primarily in the video realm, but let's not forget about storytelling and talk a little bit about storytelling. We've talked about content, but let's also talk a little bit about storytelling. I think the stakes are higher there. Sal, George, you guys have both been, kind of a little bit more on the broadcast and production side. Talk a little bit about storytelling and podcasting and other types of content.
So if you go back to the idea of a community, right? And this is, are you talking at people? Are you dialoguing? And it's one of the fundamental shifts is your storytelling now has to be part of a dialogue as opposed to your storytelling being part of a presentation. And it's a different mindset. And the idea you just touched on, the idea of a different media format, it supports a different type of engagement. So if I want to educate myself quickly, a podcast is perfect. If I want to make a business case to my boss about a new technology, I might need a white paper or competitive analysis, right? I might need someone to give me some best practices in other federal branches so I can justify a technology upgrade, right? If you think about the way whether it's a podcast, a white paper, an informative video, even just playing back a speaker's address to a keynote speech, all of those things play a part. And very few, I would say, of our partners and companies, very few, any kind of media platforms understand how to do dialogue narrative versus one-way narrative. And that's what I think has been really amazing about our experience with GovExec, is watching you guys really think about this from day one as how I'm going to keep the community part of my storytelling the whole way. And it's something that really I think is unique to you.
Yeah. And there's just definitely such keeping people engaged, like maybe having starting off a jump point from an event, but then like Anna had said, extending the content or having a regular cadence. I do think it's important as you're building community to have a regular cadence of something, whether it is a work in progress or they're getting podcasting from you, but really kind of upping your game in terms of multiple touch points. And I think that, and adding value and making sure that you're actually adding value. I know, one of the things that we kind of did even before this, and Anna, you'll remember this, we actually kind of crowdsourced through research an entire event. where, we started from the prep. We didn't know what the event was going to be. And basically everyone helped us kind of fill that content in. I think that's a very exciting kind of premise to look at, having your customers help you define what your podcast or your event looks like, and I don't know if that was just, to me, I think something that was a little bit ahead of its time, given where we are now.
Yeah, and we're also looking to do that a lot with our 2021 editorial events and editorial series. So really taking the learnings from this year, but also engaging with both our audience and our clients. What are the most critical topics, and what are the subtopics that fall under those, and what are you looking to learn? So, crowdsourcing those folks and continuing the conversation for the remainder of the year to really shape what our calendar year looks like. So, we've already gotten a lot of really great feedback, and working even directly with some of our top speaker offices and public affairs friends to have them contribute to, this is what we need to put out there. Because now more than ever, public affairs officers are looking to have platforms for their leaders to speak on. So that's also something that we're looking to engage with and continue to work closely on to make sure that we are constructing those storytelling or dialogue conversations rather than just, setting up a presentation. So yeah, lots of exciting things.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of that, go ahead, Connie, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm, a former TV guy. I'm such an interrupter. It's just par for the course for me. I was going to say that, in the root of a lot of these thought leadership programs, everything comes down to communication. And I think people underestimate sort of the innovation or innovative minds that are housed in the federal marketing community, and listening to them, listening to what actually provides them value is quite useful from, a content production or event production based standpoint. They have great ideas. They're often, they're companies that they work for ahead of the curve as far as sort of data and insights and analytics. So what you're talking about is really, really useful. Building on Sal's point about podcasts too, and these sort of audio forms of presentation, I think those marketers that I'm talking about have had to take some risks during this pandemic as well. Rather than do things in sort of a print or a white paper or a study-based format, they've been exploring more readily video and audio. And audio is a little bit less risky. So for those of you who are kind of out there thinking about trying something new, if you're on a podcast, you don't even have to really dress up. You don't have to cut your hair. You don't have to shave your beard. You don't have to clip your nose hair. You can just be totally off camera. And that's liberating in a way too. It's a nice little baby step toward video, in my opinion.
And it's just powerful content too. I mean, really, really good, powerful content and storytelling can be done, I think, in a podcast. I mean, some of the podcasts that I've even moderated, they're amazing stories, and just you really get people talking. And it feels a little less formal, and I really like it. And you can also develop a personality for your brand, I think, with a podcast. So I'm a big, if anyone knows, we love podcasts at GovExec. It's been one of our things, but don't forget about that in the mix of community building.
Can I give a couple of quick tips, Connie?
Absolutely, I love it.
For those of you watching or listening, 2 really cool products just to try. Try Blinkist. If you haven't tried Blinkist, it's these quick 15-minute summations of some of the top books out there. It's a really interesting way to see how an update works. And then Audible just came out with Audible Plus, which is basically an all-you-can-eat library of books with about 100,000, 200,000 podcasts coming out next week. And it's a great way to just test the format, get to use it, because the more you listen to it, the more you'll think about how you produce for it.
Yep, absolutely. We have a couple minutes left. Let's talk about event staffing.
Change it. Change all your staff now. There. We'll talk about it.
Does the event staff look different? Different skills, less reliant on logistics management, more knowledgeable about video and digital product management. I'm actually going to start, I'm really interested to see what all 3 of you say about this, because, you've all been involved in this. Sal, what do you think?
Well, I just wanted to get in before Anna went, because I think she's dealing this more. We actually did produce a lot of physical events until 2020. And our entire logistics team has switched over to a digital production team. The stuff we used to, you remember they used to outsource the back of the room, all those audiovisual people who sit in the back of the stadium. Now all of them work for us. And now we outsource the logistics of booking a conference room and that kind of stuff. We need highly technical think what they have to understand. They have to George's point, they have to understand audio production. They have to understand video production. They have to understand web networks. They have to understand streaming, content management. When you think of the technologies alone that the modern event professional is going to need to master over the next 3 to 4 years, even in a return to the hybrid world, because every time you throw a physical event in the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, you're going to produce a digital event right alongside it. And that changes the game. And at least in our opinion, you need the high value, high technology acumen person on staff, as opposed to maybe the logistics manager. That's an opinion. It's a strong one, but I do. Now Anna can tell you real world stuff. That's my theory.
And how do you transition your staff? I mean, you may not have that on your staff. And so, I mean, you certainly can hire for that, as Sal's indicated, but also you need to train.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been a learning experience. And, I a lot of what Sal is saying, my operations side of the team, they were the ones program managing a live event, working with our vendors, selecting venues, selecting food and beverage options, are now coding and working in HTML and content entry on different sites. So, they had to dive right in and learn a lot of that really quickly. My content team, who was really focused on speaker acquisition and helping build the discussion questions for panels and whatnot, are now learning video editing and how to create compelling, explainer videos and quick hit videos. And even our audience marketing team, they were in charge of getting the butts in the seats and making sure the room was full. Now it's also, how do we keep engaging? How do we find those innovative solutions to engage with that digital experience? So it is very different. Everyone's role has completely changed. My role has completely changed. It's interesting. And I think a lot of it has taken time for people to get onboarded and to really understand the platforms that we're using, figure out the new best practices. Connie mentioned this earlier this week, but before we knew the ins and outs of every venue in Washington, D.C., we had to really understand, we shouldn't go to this venue because it doesn't offer this. Now we have to learn that about all of our platforms. And that does take time, and it does take experimentation and practice. So, a lot of learning goes into that. And even, if you don't know how to do something, if you're unsure of the video editing, we have figured out, who our best partners are. That might not be internal staff, but also partners that can teach our internal staff. So that's why we've worked really closely with Sal and other, video production teams to really help us get that understanding internally, but also, they serve as support when we need quick and easy updates to things. So establishing the right partners, I also think, is really critical.
I think that's absolutely critical. George, any thoughts from you, kind of on, the team that you had, in a television studio was probably imagine a little different than an event studio.
I've been amazed at the, technical acumen of Anna's team. I mean, they just do so many different things that I did not anticipate. I think one thing that I will add in, and I think a lot of people would be smart to add in, is a traditional producer. The term producer, I don't think very many people understand. As Sal knows, in the entertainment world, it's kind of the money person who finances projects. In the TV or broadcast or kind of live event landscape, it's the person who kind of brings all the details together and makes sure that one segment flows well into the next segment, without it looking weird or clunky. It's not just writing, it's every detail that goes into that process. And I think that that's sorely needed in this space. I'd also say, I think people can't forget about the personal touches during this particular time. We are all locked in our offices or our parents' living rooms, or in my case, our basement, just dialed into a computer for 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 hours out of the day. to me, some of the most impactful moments that I have right now in sort of booking or building programs is when I call somebody on the telephone and I have a real conversation with them. And I hear their voice and they hear my voice. I think that's something we really shouldn't forget right now, not just sort of firing off a million emails, but actually calling people.
Yeah, there's definitely an art too to, also, helping our clients transition. I think this is kind of what you're getting at. You have to be a jack of all trades to do all these different things, but also you have to be able to, make clients feel comfortable with not only the platform, but the new content and just kind of, stitching the whole thing together, which I think is really key. And that will be, I think, a great place if you're a logistics person. I think that's a great place for you to go if you're looking for new skills to build, because I think that client interaction and really helping clients kind of, bring all of these disparate things together into one and feeling comfortable about it, I think is really key. So final question I've got for everybody. When does the live event come back? Does it come back? So Anna, I'll start with you.
I feel like I can't really answer when it comes back. We're, with everything being very uncertain still, and not sure when the vaccine will be around. I think we're going into 2021 really focused on continuing to enhance our digital experiences. When it does come back, which I do think the live event will come back, but definitely in a hybrid format, there will still be an emphasis on having that in-person engagement, but I think a larger emphasis will be placed on that live stream experience, that live digital component that's, feeding off of that live event experience. So, we've had a taste of the type of audience we can get with digital events outside of just the Beltway. Previously the majority of our events were in DC. Now we can reach a broader audience. So there's going to be a bigger push to get a larger live stream audience tuned in to the content, but also how do you continue to engage and build that community outside of just a, smaller live event. So I don't know if Sal or George have any other premonitions on when live events will come back, but those are my 2 cents.
Are you going to say something provocative, Sal, like it's never coming back?
Well, I was going to let George go first. I was hoping his neck would go first.
I'm not going to say that provocative.
Okay, so I will start with.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, George. My apologies.
That's one of those 3 strikes thing, I think. I've been thinking a lot about this particular question, Connie, and I think we will see the live event start to trickle back in midpoint next year. I think it's going to look vastly different. And I think that those initial attempts to do so are going to be largely unsuccessful. I look to schools as kind of the pioneer or model in this place. They will have had months of groundwork trying to create safe zones for some people, but also enhancing the distance learning element simultaneously. So I think that they're the best place to look for an answer there. Me personally, and the way I viewed this since the beginning of the pandemic is in those sort of risk mitigation terms that I mentioned at the top of this discussion. If we are hosting as an organization these top level officials in, cabinet level agencies or the Department of Defense, are we going to be really willing to put those people at risk just simply to put on an event? That makes me slightly uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to step into a place where I'm putting someone else in danger.
Great point.
Sal, that was just a great answer. No, it was a great answer. It's so thoughtful, right? That are we thoughtful as an event producer is going to be one of the critical questions of the next 2 years. And I look at it, I'm going to try and be as controversial as possible, Connie. The first thing I will tell you is I don't think the stuff like CES is ever coming back the way it is. Do I want to go with 100,000 people to Vegas to hang out in 20,000 person chunks when everybody flew in from around the world? I don't know that level of comfort will ever exist again. But do I think you might regionalize CES and maybe I'll go to a smaller representative event in 8 cities? I think I might do that. Right. So I think that can reinvent itself. I think the smaller and more intimate the event, I think the more likely it is that it'll come back. But to Anna's point, we're going to have same day testing. We're going to have a vaccine. And I think I might not have, I don't know that I need to have to get on an airplane again. If I can drive there or it's in a close proximity geographically, I think I'm there. Do I want to take a 4-hour flight across the country? You know what? It's going to have to be pretty prestigious for me to do that. So the more effort it requires of me, the more amazing your brand and experience better be. And I think that goes back to what we talked about, which is the stakes are just higher. Yeah. And if you're a B player, your odds of success are pretty low. Because I can't remember. I just saw a venture capitalist say this about companies he owns. He said, if somebody wants to take a business trip to New York and spend $4,000, it better be a $500,000 or plus opportunity, or they don't get on the plane. And I think that kind of thinking is going to apply to us and the event community for the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, definitely being more discerning. I mean, we're going to, I think we've definitely learned, our time is precious and it will be very interesting to see what happens. Well, there you have it. I want to thank my panel, Anna Pettijohn, George Jackson, and Sal Fuentes. And thanks to you, our viewers. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Government Executive Media Group's Connect 2021. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you again to our fantastic panel. Next week, I'm excited to announce that Omar Johnson, former CMO of Beats by Dre and former VP of Marketing at Apple, will deliver a keynote address on his marketing and branding lessons from his world of consumer marketing. In the meantime, continue to explore the Connect 2021 platform. We'll be in touch with updates so you know as soon as new content is available to enjoy. Thank you again for joining us for our Week 2 session, and I look forward to seeing you next week.